It starts with a machine that feels alive in your hands, not because it's smooth, but because it fights back. Every vibration runs through your bones, every shift feels like an act of defiance, and every ride leaves you more connected to the road than you thought possible. This isn't about comfort or polish. It's about the kind of mechanical honesty that refuses to apologize. For decades, riders have been split, some dismissing it as crude and unrefined, others praising it as the purest expression of two-wheeled rebellion. But what makes a motorcycle cross that line between frustratingly imperfect and enduringly iconic? How does a design born in the middle of the 20th century still inspire fierce loyalty today despite all its flaws? We're diving into one of the rawest legends ever put on the road, peeling back its origins, its struggles, and why its spirit refuses to die. This is the story of a machine that was never meant to please everyone, but somehow managed to define an entire attitude. Like and subscribe, and drop a comment with what machine you want to see broken down next. The Harley-Davidson Ironhead Sportster arrived in 1957 at a moment when the motorcycle world was shifting fast, and the company needed a bold answer to rising competition. The Ironhead Sportster was not built to be refined. It was built to be a street fighter, a stripped-down bruiser meant to push back against the wave of nimble, lightweight machines arriving from overseas. Its very name came from its iron cylinder heads, a choice that gave it durability but also weight, vibration, and heat. From day one, this motorcycle was a paradox, tough yet temperamental, exciting yet exhausting. Riders who climbed onto an Ironhead Sportster discovered that it wasn't about effortless cruising. It was about wrestling with a machine that demanded constant attention. In the late 1950s, owning one was as much a statement of identity as it was a means of transportation. You didn't choose this bike for convenience, you chose it because it matched the grit you wanted to project. That intent was no accident. Harley-Davidson designed the Ironhead Sportster to go head-to-head with rivals who threatened to undercut American dominance in performance and style, and in doing so, created a motorcycle that carried both the hopes and the burdens of its brand. The Ironhead's design wasn't revolutionary in the way modern riders might expect, but its combination of raw power and bare-knuckle simplicity set a tone that drew in a loyal following. It became a symbol of rebellion at a time when motorcycles themselves were being framed as tools of youth culture and counterculture. In fact, the Ironhead Sportster embodied the struggle Harley faced in those decades, how to stay true to its roots while adapting to a market that demanded more speed, more agility, and more edge. That struggle defined not only its place in the lineup, but also its reputation among riders who learned to love its flaws as much as its strengths. What really made the Ironhead Sportster stand out was how it forced a rider to engage fully, whether that meant kicking it to life on a cold morning, feeling every vibration through the seat and handlebars, or adjusting to its quirks mile after mile. For some, it was too much work. For others, it was the only way to ride. And that's where the first chapter of its story ends. Because as the 1960s and 1970s unfolded, the Ironhead Sportster wasn't just a motorcycle anymore. It was becoming a cultural flashpoint, admired and resented in equal measure. That's where its reputation really takes off, and that's what we'll dive into next. The Harley-Davidson Ironhead Sportster entered the 1960s and 1970s as more than just a model in the lineup. It was now the dividing line in motorcycle culture. On paper, the Ironhead Sportster offered riders a burly American V-twin with torque you could feel in your chest. Yet in practice, it came with compromises that split opinions sharply. Some owners swore by its raw personality, seeing it as the antithesis of clinical engineering. Others grew tired of its constant oil leaks, vibration, and stubborn maintenance quirks. What kept the Ironhead Sportster alive through those decades wasn't flawless performance, but the fact that it represented something deeper in the American imagination: rebellion. While rival manufacturers sold smoothness, the Ironhead sold attitude. You didn't just ride one, you declared something about who you were, and the aftermarket only fueled that fire. Custom shops, garage builders, and drag racers tore into the Ironhead Sportster, unlocking more speed, tweaking its stance, and reinforcing its outlaw image. This was the era of choppers, cafe racers, and stripped-down performance bikes, and the Ironhead became a natural donor, a raw canvas for self-expression. Yet the very popularity of customization also magnified its flaws. Stock Ironheads often suffered by comparison to rivals that required far less work to feel complete. Still, that tension between potential and frustration gave the Ironhead a unique place in Harley-Davidson's lineup. It was the bike you had to make your own, for better or worse. By the late 1970s, regulatory pressures added another challenge. Emissions rules and safety standards were tightening, and the Ironhead Sportster was showing its age. Riders who had grown up with it loved the familiarity, but new buyers were starting to expect refinement that the Ironhead couldn't easily deliver. Even so, its cultural footprint remained undeniable. It was the motorcycle most often associated with youthful rebellion, garage-built ingenuity, and American toughness in the face of global competition. This clash between legacy and modernity set the stage for what came next: the eventual retirement of the Ironhead Sportster in the 1980s, and the shift to a new era that would redefine Harley-Davidson's future. The Harley-Davidson Ironhead Sportster faced its final years in the early 1980s as both a proud survivor and a clear relic. For nearly 3 decades, the Ironhead Sportster had been the raw, unapologetic face of Harley-Davidson's street performance, but by the time the Evolution engine arrived in 1986, its limitations could no longer be ignored. Riders still loved its torque and attitude, yet many had grown weary of constant wrenching, oil leaks, and heat issues. The Ironhead Sportster was loud, heavy, and demanding, qualities that gave it character, but also underscored just how far motorcycle design had moved forward around the world. Retiring the Ironhead wasn't just an engineering decision. It was a cultural shift. Harley-Davidson knew it couldn't continue to sell a machine that required its riders to suffer as much as they celebrated. And yet, the end of production did not mean the end of its influence. Instead, the Ironhead Sportster became a badge of honor in the custom scene, a machine prized precisely because it was rough, flawed, and authentic. Builders and collectors sought it out, not to erase its quirks, but to embrace them, preserving the very imperfections that had once frustrated owners. That paradox, frustration becoming fascination, is what defines its legacy. The Ironhead Sportster's endurance lies in the fact that it represents an era when motorcycles were not yet polished consumer products, but mechanical partners that demanded grit. Even today, riders who hunt down an Ironhead do so, knowing they will fight it as much as they will ride it, and that is exactly the point. It is remembered not as the smoothest or most reliable Harley-Davidson, but as the one that never pretended to be anything other than raw. That spirit, untamed and unapologetic, is why the Ironhead Sportster continues to cast a long shadow, shaping how enthusiasts talk about authenticity, rebellion, and what it means to love a motorcycle for all the wrong reasons. And that enduring tension brings its story full circle, from a competitor in the 1950s to a cult icon decades after its official end. The Harley-Davidson Ironhead Sportster leaves behind a legacy that is impossible to confuse with any other motorcycle. Across nearly 3 decades of production, it cemented itself as the rawest Harley, one that riders didn't just own, they wrestled with. In the US today, the Ironhead Sportster remains available on the used market, often at prices that reflect both its cult following and its demanding upkeep. Clean running examples can still be found at reasonable cost compared to rarer vintage bikes, but buyers quickly discover that purchase price is only the beginning. Parts availability is decent thanks to aftermarket support. Yet reliability is always a question of how much care the previous owner invested and whether you're willing to continue that commitment. Owning an Ironhead Sportster in modern times means accepting oil leaks, vibration, and maintenance as part of the package. It isn't a bike for those who want a smooth, worry-free ride. But for enthusiasts who crave a direct connection to Harley-Davidson's rebellious core, there may be no better way to experience it. Unlike later Sportsters that smoothed out edges, the Ironhead keeps its flaws front and center, daring you to embrace them. For collectors, it represents an important bridge between Harley's mid-century survival and its later resurgence, making it a piece of history as much as a motorcycle. For custom builders, it remains a platform dripping with character, one that rewards creativity while punishing laziness. And for everyday riders who choose it today, it's still a test of patience, pride, and perseverance. The Ironhead Sportster endures because it embodies a truth many enthusiasts quietly admit. Perfection is forgettable, but imperfection is unforgettable. It is a machine that demands you meet it on its terms, and if you do, the bond becomes something deeper than transportation. In that way, the Ironhead Sportster continues to prove that rawness can be a virtue, and that the hardest motorcycles to love are often the ones we never forget. Final thought: when it comes to American motorcycles, The Ironhead Sportster will always be remembered as the rebel that refused to play nice, and that's exactly why it still matters.